Hello, my name's Terry Townshend and I'm a fellow and advisor at the Paulson Institute. Rainforests are often described as the lungs of the planet, and if that's the case, I'd say that wetlands are the kidneys. So wetlands are, of course, found all over the world, ranging from huge river deltas, mighty estuaries, coastal mudflats to floodplains, the Great Lakes, even peat bogs. And they've supported human life for millennia and essential for human health and prosperity. If we think about the first civilizations, from the Nile and the Mekong, they sprang up all around wetlands. And all over the world, wetlands today continue to provide us with food, water, supplies, transport, and leisure. And in fact, it's estimated that wetlands provide livelihoods for around 1 billion people worldwide. And just an example of that, it's estimated that around 50% of international tourists travel to wetland areas for relaxation. And of course, that supports millions of jobs around the world. More than half of the human population relies on food produced in wetlands, such as rice. A staple diet for so many people. And wetlands not only hold most of our available fresh water, but they also improve its quality by naturally filtering pollutants. So wetlands are vital to human livelihoods and human prosperity. Wetlands are one of the world's most biodiverse habitats. Provide homes for many endangered species. They provide nurseries for fish and other aquatic life. And of course, they're also vital, what we call service stations for millions of migratory birds to rest and refuel. Many endemic species are found only in specific wetland areas. Around 40% of the world's plants and animals depend on wetlands. And every year, around 200 new species are discovered in freshwater wetlands around the world. So what is the relationship between wetlands and climate change? Well, wetlands are a key tool in helping us to mitigate climate change and also in protecting us from its impacts. Wetlands can help slow down climate change by naturally absorbing and storing vast amounts of carbon. They're the most effective carbon sinks on the planet. And one type of wetlands called peatlands are particularly impressive at storing carbon. In fact, they store around twice as much carbon as all of the world's forests combined. Wetlands are vital for mitigating climate change, but they also help to protect us from the impacts. So, for example, wetlands help to protect us from extreme weather events, and they also help us to recover from disasters. So, for example, by storing rain like a sponge and buffering us from the sea, they can protect us from floods, tsunamis, storm surges, cyclones, hurricanes, and so on. And in fact, mangroves and salt marshes are thought to shield around 60% of the world's human population that lives along our coasts, help to protect those people from coastal flooding. And in fact, studies have shown that each kilometre of mangrove forest can reduce the impact of a storm surge by about 50 centimetres. And in urban areas, wetlands can protect us from heat. So in Colombo, in Sri Lanka, the urban wetlands there have been shown to reduce air temperatures in the hottest part of the year by up to 10 degrees Celsius. So that reduces the need for air conditioning and the demand for energy and the resulting carbon emissions. Well, wetlands have really been abused. They've been taken for granted and undervalued for centuries. So they're subject to lots of threats, including pollution, including unsustainable water use for agriculture or other uses, effluents from various industrial processes going into freshwater ecosystems. And of course, they're also affected negatively by climate change. And today, wetlands are under more pressure than ever before. So there's some statistics about wetland loss. So it's estimated that we've lost about 35% of the world's wetlands since 1970. The rate of disappearance is about 3 times faster than that of forests. Around 25% of wetland species are facing extinction, and today less than 1% of the Earth's fresh water is usable. We've really mistreated our wetlands over a very long period of time, and they're now in a very sorry state. Well, international cooperation is crucial. So many wetland ecosystems, if we look at major rivers, for example, they cross political boundaries. They're not just contained in one country. So protection can be effective only if countries work together. And of course, if we look at coastal wetlands, then migratory species such as waterbirds, many of whom migrate from some of the most northerly parts of the planet, Siberia, Alaska, to some of the most southerly parts of the planet, in Australia and New Zealand. And of course, they need to stop, rest and refuel along the way. So migratory birds don't respect political boundaries. And again, if we're going to protect them, we need to protect not only the places where they breed, not only the places where they spend the non-breeding season, but also the places in between that they need in order to be able to make that journey. And one great example of international cooperation is the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. So this is a voluntary partnership of 22 countries, including national governments, NGOs and international organisations, working together to conserve key habitats for migratory birds that make these incredible journeys from the very north to the very south. So one country alone cannot protect these species. We need all of these countries to work together so that the stopovers, the breeding grounds, the non-breeding grounds can be protected. Another example is the Wadden Sea in Europe. So this is an intertidal ecosystem that encompasses the coasts of Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands. And these countries have been working together successfully to help protect this ecosystem. And in 2009, the German and Dutch parts of the Wadden Sea were inscribed as a World Heritage Site, and the Danish part joined in 2014. And now, today, a similar process is happening in the Yellow Sea. Some of the most important coastal wetlands on the Chinese part of the Yellow Sea have now been inscribed as World Heritage Sites, with more in the pipeline. And the vision is to connect those sites in China with those intertidal coastal wetlands in the Republic of Korea and the DPRK. Well, there are several ways that governments and policymakers can help support the conservation of wetlands. In fact, governments have a really central role. First way they can do that is through legislation, through making laws. So, for example, in China, we now have a dedicated wetland protection law, one of the very few countries in the world to have such a law. And there can also be policies. So policies are also important. Policies that, for example, value the ecosystem services provided by wetlands. In our traditional economic model, we don't really value nature appropriately. And so we need regulations and policies to create that value, to discourage people from damaging or destroying them, to create a cost for doing that, and to create a benefit for those who protect and restore. And that can only be done through government policy. Then there are things like protected areas. So nature reserves, national parks, creating protected areas through government action and regulation is a really important way to protect and sustainably manage wetland ecosystems. And of course, another important role for governments and policymakers is public engagement and education about the value of wetlands. So if we grow up through our school system and our education system, respecting wetlands, understanding the value that wetlands provide to us, we're much more likely to take decisions in our professional lives that support protection and sustainable management of wetlands than if we go through our education system without being exposed to that information.